The moment Brooke screamed, "You ruined my life," I felt my chest crack open, like the air itself had turned against me. The words reverberated through the dining room, loud enough to drown out the clink of silverware and the muted buzz of conversation. I sat there, stiff in the corner, my hands curled around the chipped mug of tea that had long gone cold. The warmth had faded from it hours ago, just like the warmth that used to exist in this house. Or maybe the warmth that I only ever imagined was there. The Bennett family home glowed with warm, ambient lights that softened the sharp lines of the vaulted ceilings and the designer furniture Deborah had curated to perfection. A centerpiece of harvest flowers adorned the long dining table, the turkey sliced with surgical precision, the crystal glasses catching the light like ornaments on a tree. Everything was meticulously placed, except for me. I was the placeholder in the family portrait, the one seat too many at the table. My plate, a pristine china dish, sat half-filled. No one noticed it was untouched. I watched as Brooke commanded the room like a host on her own show, phone propped up by a ring light that glared like a second sun. Her voice lilted with performative charm, thanking her followers for helping her hit 100K. My stomach churned when she gestured to the screen, explaining a productivity hack, a method eerily close to something I had drafted last year. Her words flowed freely, borrowing lines I had once whispered in brainstorming sessions, ideas she had shrugged off then, only to regurgitate now as her own. No one noticed. No one cared. Charles sipped his wine quietly, eyes glued to his plate, as if he could drown out the tension by disappearing into the dark swirl of Pinot Noir. Deborah, ever composed, sat poised at the head of the table, a satisfied smile curling at the edges of her lips like a bow wrapped too tight. Then it happened. A static crackled from the speakers. Brooke's phone froze, her screen pixelating just as she was about to demonstrate the next step. The room fell into an awkward silence. Her smile faltered, eyes darting around for a scapegoat. And then her gaze snapped to me. "God, Olivia, not again!" she snapped, her voice cutting through the air like glass shattering on tile. "Every time you ruin everything. Just by sitting there, you throw off the vibe." The words hit me harder than they should have. I blinked, breath caught in my throat. It wasn't the first time, not by a long shot. But tonight it felt different. My mother's voice followed, cold and measured. "Brooke's right, Olivia. You have this way of disrupting things. Can't you see this was important to her?" My eyes darted to Charles, silently pleading for even a flicker of disagreement, but he only sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like this was an all-too-familiar burden. The room seemed to tilt around me, the faces at the table warping into a gallery of strangers. I realized in that moment, painfully, that I was an outsider in my own family. An afterthought, a disruption, an easy target for their collective frustrations. I didn't say a word. There was no point. My throat felt like sandpaper, my heart a hollow thud in my chest. I stood, the chair legs scraping softly against the hardwood as I pushed back. No one tried to stop me. I reached for my coat draped over the back of my chair, the fabric brushing against my arm like a final, fleeting comfort. I caught the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, each second slicing into the heavy silence. The half-empty glass of wine by my plate glinted, untouched, a perfect metaphor for the life I had tried and failed to pour into this family. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, the chill wrapping around my skin, biting at my cheeks. I didn't look back. There was no reason to. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing them in their curated world, leaving me standing alone beneath the weight of a family that had never truly seen me. My breath misted in the cold, sharp and ragged, as I walked down the stone path away from the house, each step echoing in the quiet. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, a hollow vibration, and I ignored it. The sound of the clock ticking inside the house seemed to follow me as I disappeared into the night. I woke up in a motel bed, the room smelling like stale bleach and forgotten promises. 14 missed calls blinking on my phone. My head throbbed with a dull ache, a mix of restless sleep and the weight of last night pressing into my bones. The air was heavy, suffocating in its stillness. I sat up slowly, rubbing at my eyes, and there it was. The chipped mug from the night before flashing in my mind, its handle worn smooth by years of use. And right on its heels, another image. The unopened gift I had sent my mother last year. Tissue paper folded neatly. The card inside written in my careful handwriting, words I had labored over before mailing it with trembling hands. I had asked for nothing more than a chance, a small space in her heart. She never opened it, just like she never really opened me. I glanced at the phone again, the notifications piling up like snowdrifts. Deborah's voice in the first voicemail, tight and measured. "Olivia, I know you're hurt, but we can't let this family implode over a little misunderstanding. Be the bigger person." Then Charles, sighing like the weight of the world rested solely on his shoulders. "Liv, Brooke's a mess right now. You know she's under a lot of pressure. Just help her out, will you? For all our sakes." The last message was from Brooke herself, her voice strained but defiant. "You're overreacting. You always make things bigger than they are. Just stop, okay?" I let the phone drop onto the nightstand. The sound it made, a dull clack, felt like punctuation on the end of a sentence I never wanted to write. I dressed in yesterday's clothes, jeans wrinkled from sleep, sweater stretched thin at the elbows, and walked 2 blocks to a cafe near the bus depot. The neon sign in the window flickered erratically, casting a pinkish glow over the scratched tabletops and mismatched chairs. The smell of burnt toast and industrial cleaner mingled with the faint hum of an old fridge. I ordered the smallest coffee they had, $1.75. The cup felt too light in my hand, a reminder of how little I had left. $227 and some change. I claimed the seat closest to the outlet, plugging in my dying phone, the charging cord frayed and held together by a strip of tape. I opened my laptop and stared at the blank login screen of a tutoring platform I hadn't touched in years. My cursor blinked back at me, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. I logged in, surprised to see my old profile still there, a snapshot frozen in time. My bio read, "Patient, reliable, good at making hard things easier." I stared at those words for a long moment before I added, "Available immediately. Specializing in SAT, LCT prep, writing support." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I added, "I believe in showing up, even when no one else does." I submitted the update and applied to a dozen listings. Parents desperate for help with their kids' test scores, students drowning under the weight of expectations, people I understood in ways my own family never had. A ping of notification, then another, scattered across the screen like raindrops. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Olivia?" a voice said, hesitant but familiar. I looked up to see Mila standing by my table, clutching a folder to her chest like it was something fragile. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept either. She glanced around nervously before pulling out the chair across from me. I saw the post Brooke made last night. I didn't know if you were..." She stopped, swallowed hard, then placed the folder on the table between us. "What is this?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Brooke's course outlines," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Her branding pitch deck. Olivia, I think you need to see this." I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the cover, my heart drumming in my chest. Then I opened it. The first page was a lesson plan. Productivity hacks for the modern professional, but the phrasing, the structure, even the diagrams, they were mine. The next page and the next and the next, it was all there. The diagnostic rubric I had designed in my first year of tutoring. The color palette I'd chosen for a side project Brooke once dismissed as too academic. My work rebranded with Brooke's logo, her smiling face plastered in the corner of each page. I felt my breath catch, a cold shock running through me, numbing my fingertips. I overheard them. Mila said quietly. Brooke and Mrs. Reynolds. My breath catch, a cold shock running through me, numbing my fingertips. I overheard them. Mila said quietly. Brooke and Mrs. Reynolds. At the gala last month. They were talking about the new course, how it was a fresh start for the family brand, and how you wouldn't stand in the way. I stared at her, the words filtering in slowly, heavy and jagged. My mind began to thread the pieces together, like a cracked mirror reassembling itself into a reflection I had tried so hard not to see. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-time slight. This was a pattern, a deliberate erasure. The weight of it settled in my chest, heavier than before, but somehow sharper too, like a blade I could finally see. Mila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me, her eyes wide with something that looked like guilt, or maybe fear. I looked down at my own phone, the screen lighting up with a notification. Dallas Tutoring Center is interested in your profile. I felt something shift inside me. Not a surge of hope, but the slow, quiet ignition of resolve. They erased me. But they forgot I kept receipts. The motel room felt like a different place tonight. Less a place to sleep. More a war room. Papers covered every surface, emails printed in black and white, lesson plans I'd written years ago, screenshots from Brooke's website, sticky notes with timestamps scrawled in fading ink. The laptop glowed dimly on the table, its light casting long, jagged shadows across the cheap wood-paneled walls. Outside, rain tapped against the window in a steady, insistent rhythm, like it was keeping time with my racing heart. I picked up the birthday card I had sent my mother last year, the one I'd found shoved under a pile of coupons in the kitchen drawer. I read the words again. Mom, if there's still a space in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything, just a call back. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you. The ink looked faded, but it didn't matter. No one had read it when it was fresh. They hadn't cared then, and they wouldn't now. I slid the card aside, its edges curling from time and neglect, and turned back to the laptop. My cursor hovered over a folder labeled Curriculum Archive. Click. Hundreds of files opened, neatly named and dated. Study Habits 101, College Essay Planning Guide, Diagnostic Rubric Draft. Each file had a timestamp, proof that I had built this. Line by line, chart by chart. And there it was again. Brooke's version, almost word for word. Even the headers she had changed slightly, just enough to pretend it was original, still reeked of me. I highlighted the differences, the overlaps, the patterns. My head throbbed, but the numbness I'd felt was wearing off, replaced by something sharper, steadier. I reached for my phone, hesitated for a second, then tapped the number Mila had given me. The line rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. This is Margot Klein. Her voice sounded like it could slice through glass. I took a shaky breath. Hi, Ms. Klein. My name is Olivia Bennett. I think I have a problem with stolen intellectual property. My sister, she's using my work as her own. I expected her to interrupt, maybe sound skeptical, but instead she said evenly, Tell me everything. Start with the facts. I started talking, slow at first, then faster, the words tumbling out in a messy tangle. Margot listened quietly, occasionally asking a pointed question. Do you have proof of authorship? Yes. Original drafts? Yes. Backups, timestamps? Yes. Each yes steadied me piece by piece. By the time we hung up, she had given me a list of what to send, where to send it, and what the next steps would look like. Her last words lingered. Don't panic. Document everything. I hung up and printed the most critical files, drafts, emails, diagrams, until the printer wheezed in protest. I pinned them on the motel wall in rows, each page a tiny act of reclaiming. My handwriting, my formatting, my ideas. They had tried to erase me, but here I was, putting myself back in frame, one piece of paper at a time. Mila sat on the edge of the bed, watching quietly. Her eyes were soft, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "You know," she said, voice low, "I used to think you were too quiet for this family. Like you'd fade out if you didn't fight for attention. But maybe that quiet, maybe that's your power." I glanced at her, unsure whether to thank her or tell her it wasn't a compliment. But then she smiled, a small, tentative thing, and I just nodded. The rain outside picked up, a steady drumming now, like a pulse in the background. I sat back in the chair, letting the room blur for a moment, then sharpen again. I had the receipts. I had the law on my side. Then I remembered the folder I had tucked away years ago, the one labeled Grandma Legal. My breath caught as I opened it, scanning the document I had barely remembered uploading. And there it was, in her neat looping script: all intellectual property and preparatory curriculum created or co-developed with Olivia Bennett shall remain under her sole name. A clause, simple but clear. Proof. A shield. I printed it out and pinned it to the wall above the others. The room felt different now. Still cramped, still cheap, but filled with something fierce. A vibration jolted me. My phone lit up with a new message. "Brooke, you're making a mistake. Don't do this." I stared at the screen for a long moment. The cursor blinked at me in the message app, waiting for a reply. I didn't type anything. I didn't know her words. Instead, I turned off the phone, folded the birthday card one last time, and placed it beneath the stack of printed evidence. My name was on those pages, my work, my fight. And this time I wasn't walking away. The world thought she was the golden child, until I showed them the receipts. The motel room buzzed with a quiet hum, the air heavy like a pre-storm silence. Rain streaked down the window, smearing the city lights into vague, trembling lines. My laptop glowed like a portal, the camera's small green dot an unblinking eye. I sat in the center of it all. Papers taped to the walls, yellowing sticky notes trailing dates and timestamps, screenshots pinned like evidence in a courtroom only I had built. I thought of Mila's words. They underestimated you because you never fought back. Until now, and felt the weight of them settle into my spine, grounding me. The will lay open on the desk, my grandmother's careful script a steadying force. I began. My voice, slow and deliberate, filled the cramped space. "This clause," I said, holding the page steady in the frame, "names me, Olivia Bennett, as the sole heir to all educational content, lesson plans, and intellectual property created under my grandmother's mentorship." I paused, letting the words sink in, then clicked to a side-by-side. Brooke's polished course branding on the left, my original drafts on the right. Identical diagrams, bullet points lifted word for word. I scrolled slowly, highlighting the overlaps, the quiet theft. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't tremble. There was no anger left, only clarity, like glass freshly wiped clean. At exactly 7 p.m., I clicked upload. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of it, live in one breath. The response was immediate, electric. Notifications poured in, a storm of comments and reposts, old students chiming in. She taught me when no one else would. Former colleagues sharing the video with captions like, "This is why we document everything." My inbox bloomed with messages. "Olivia, I remember you explaining this concept in a workshop." I knew it wasn't Brooke's. Teachers reposted side-by-side comparisons, creators dissected the will, commentators raised their eyebrows at the legal clause. By midnight, the video had crossed 50,000 views. By noon, it had doubled. Brooke's response landed like a dull thud. A black and white photo of her smiling, the caption vague and deflecting. People love to tear down what they don't understand. Stay strong, friends. But the comment section didn't buy it. They flooded her post with questions. Where's the original content? Why isn't Olivia credited? Did you really steal from your own sister? The tone shifted from admiration to suspicion, from curated perfection to cracks she couldn't seal. Then came the leak. An intern, anonymous but clearly fed up, dropped screenshots of internal emails, chat logs, planning documents. Brooke had known. She had asked for revisions on slides, requested a more polished version of the diagrams. My name, stripped from every corner, erased like a smudge she thought no one would notice. But someone did. And now it was out there. Irrefutable. The video climbed, #number Justice for Olivia trending, voices rising in a collective. Finally, someone said it. I sat back on the motel bed, my laptop balanced on a stack of folders, watching the storm unfold. There was a strange quiet in my chest. Not triumph, not rage, just a steady pulse of this is happening. Then my phone rang. Margot's name blinked across the screen, her tone clipped but steady. Brace yourself. They just filed an emergency injunction to take your site down. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. The game had shifted, but I wasn't the same player they thought I was. They didn't call to apologize. They called because they were losing. The words hovered in my mind as I stepped onto the Bennett estate's front porch, my breath fogging in the chill of early December. The heavy oak door loomed like a gate to some other life, one I'd never truly belonged to, no matter how many times I told myself otherwise. My reflection in the glass was sharp, determined. I rang the bell once, then let my hand drop. They knew I was here. The door creaked open, revealing Deborah in a crisp cream blouse, pearls at her throat, hair swept back as if she could smooth away the mess we all stood in. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Olivia, she said, voice strained with a sweetness that tasted like sugar over poison. Let's talk. Like a family. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of cedar and old money seeping into my skin like a toxin. The dining room had been hastily cleared, the long mahogany table bare except for a single carafe of water and neatly folded napkins. Damage control in session. Charles sat at the end of the table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Brooke perched on the chair closest to the window, mascara smudged in streaks down her cheeks. Her phone flipped face down beside her, probably vibrating with unread messages. Her eyes locked onto me with a venomous gleam, though her hands trembled when she reached for a glass of water. Olivia, Deborah began, gesturing to the empty seat across from them like it was some grand invitation. We're all under a lot of pressure right now. Let's handle this like adults, privately. I didn't move. Say what you need to. Brooke's voice cracked first, raw and brittle. Why are you doing this? You're destroying me. I'm getting death threats, Olivia. People think I stole from you. I let the silence settle, let the weight of her words hang in the air like a noose. Then I spoke, steady and measured. You did. Her breath hitched, a small sob that sounded rehearsed. You're supposed to be my sister. You're supposed to have my back. Charles shifted in his chair, his gaze briefly flicking between us, but he didn't speak. He never did when it mattered. Deborah leaned forward, her hands folded neatly like she was preparing for a board meeting. Olivia, be reasonable. Take down the video. Let's release a joint statement. Explain it was a misunderstanding. We can... I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder, laying it flat on the table. The sound echoed, sharp and final. I opened it, revealing the scanned will, the original files, the timestamps, the side-by-side comparisons. Every piece of the puzzle they thought I'd never solve. I slid it across the polished wood toward them. This is not a misunderstanding. And this is not a negotiation. Brooke's hand shot out, flipping through the papers with a frantic energy, her nails scraping the surface. Her breath came in shallow gasps, the color draining from her face as the truth stared back at her, printed in black and white. Deborah's face paled, her mouth tightening into a thin line. You can't do this, Brooke whispered, voice breaking. You'll ruin everything. No, I said quietly, my voice steady, the tremor gone. You already did. Deborah cleared her throat, voice slipping into that silky, persuasive tone I knew too well. We can fix this. We'll offer a settlement, something fair for everyone. A clean break? No more public spectacle. I smiled then, a slow, tired smile. You think you can buy silence with a check? The room seemed to contract around us, the tension like a drawn wire about to snap. Brooke's breathing turned ragged, her fingers curling into fists. I stood, gathering my things in one fluid motion. My chair scraped softly against the hardwood, the sound precise, deliberate. I looked at each of them, Deborah, Charles, Brooke, and felt nothing but the clarity I'd fought so hard to reach. Family doesn't erase you, I said, my voice a quiet storm. You did. And now I'm done. I walked out, my heels clicking against the floor like a final punctuation mark. The cold air bit at my cheeks, you'll regret this. I didn't turn back. They thought they could silence me with a check. They forgot I had a voice. The sun slanted through the wide window, catching the edges of the thank you notes pinned across the wall like fragments of something whole. I traced the edge of one with my fingertip. Sarah's neat handwriting, her words still ringing in my mind. You were the first person who believed in me. I let the words settle, not as an echo, but as a seed. This was the legacy I was building, the one no amount of money could erase. A soft chime broke the quiet. I glanced at my laptop. Margot's email sat at the top of my inbox, the subject line bold and final. Legal resolution, case closed. My breath caught, then steadied. I clicked it open, the words as crisp as the folded will I had pinned on my wall for months. Brooke's injunction was officially withdrawn. My rights secured. My work protected. I leaned back in my chair, letting the tension slide off my shoulders like a heavy coat I'd worn for too long. The edges of my lips curled. Not a grin. Not quite. Just the quiet satisfaction of a fight survived. The light felt warmer on my skin. I opened the small file folder that had been waiting beside my laptop. The one labeled Scholarship Fund, Draft Proposal. The name across the top read, The Bennett Foundation for Educational Equity, in honor of Evelyn Bennett, my grandmother's name, her legacy. And now a piece of mine. I clicked submit. Later that afternoon, I drafted my final post. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. I won't take hush money for pain I didn't cause. I won't be erased. To those fighting to be heard, don't stop speaking. The world needs your voice. I posted it without a second thought. The comments flooded in, some from old students, some from strangers, voices I'd never met but somehow knew. They said things like, "This is the story I needed today, and thank you for showing it's possible to fight back." I let them wash over me, but I didn't let them drown me. I knew now. Validation was nice, but it wasn't the point. The point was freedom. My phone buzzed again. A new email. Podcast invitation. Women's voices, women's rights. A conversation with Olivia Bennett. I stared at it for a long moment. The old me, the one who'd have hesitated, shrunk herself smaller, wondered if she was enough. She was gone. I was enough. I was always enough. A knock at the door. I turned, stood up slowly. The sunlight caught the edge of the thank you notes as I passed, the soft rustle of paper whispering legacy. I opened the door and stepped into the future. Betrayal had carved deep scars, but Olivia's quiet resolve turned those wounds into proof. What her family tried to erase, she reclaimed, page by page, post by post, each fact a blade cutting through the illusion. The lesson was clear. Justice doesn't arrive by chance. It's summoned by courage. When the liars grow too loud, the truth waits for its moment. And then, it echoes louder. Sometimes all it takes is one voice refusing to be silenced. And suddenly the world listens.